Is my wife's job putting our marriage at risk? I'm 51 and have spent the last 3 years living in Detroit, working at an auto manufacturing plant to support my family back in Dallas. My wife, Lisa, is 47, and we have a 10-year-old daughter, Emily. The distance has been tough, but it was a necessary sacrifice after the pandemic turned our lives upside down. Before COVID, we lived a modest but happy life in Dallas. I co owned a small auto repair shop with my best friend, and Lisa worked as an office manager at a local company. We weren't rich, but we made ends meet. Our home was an old but comfortable house I inherited from my grandparents, and Lisa's parents lived close by, often helping with Emily. When the pandemic hit, everything crumbled. My repair shop couldn't survive without customers. No one was driving, and people were selling their cars just to stay afloat. Lisa's company downsized, and she was laid off. With no income and rapidly dwindling savings, we had to rely on food banks and community aid. It was humbling and, at times, downright humiliating. We tried to hold out, but it became clear that staying in Dallas wasn't sustainable. A cousin of mine called one day to tell me about a job opening at a car factory in Detroit. It wasn't the kind of work I imagined myself doing at this stage of my life, but it paid well and came with housing. With no other options, I accepted and packed my bags, leaving Lisa and Emily behind. The job wasn't easy. Long hours, back-breaking work, and living in a small dormitory provided by the company. My only reprieve was talking to Lisa and Emily each evening. Lisa kept me motivated, always saying how proud she was of me and how this sacrifice would pay off in the long run. We both dreamed of saving enough to bring them to Detroit so we could live as a family again. For the first year, things seemed normal. Lisa took on the responsibilities of managing everything at home, and we stayed close despite the distance. I visited them every 6 months during my short 10-day leaves, and although I hated leaving again, I felt reassured by how strong Lisa seemed. But things began to change about 6 months ago after my last visit home. Lisa finally found a job working as a personal assistant for a tech startup. She was excited about it, and I was happy for her. After being out of work for so long, I knew it meant a lot to her to feel like she was contributing again. At first, she seemed energized, but as the weeks went on, I noticed she became harder to reach. Our daily calls turned into every other day, and when we did talk, she seemed distracted or rushed. When I visited Dallas earlier this year, something felt different. Lisa wasn't as warm or excited to see me as she usually was. She spent a lot of time on her phone, and when I tried to talk to her about her job or her boss, she gave vague answers. She mentioned that her boss, a young CEO named Ben, was demanding and tough to work for. In fact, she admitted that she had quit the job a few months in because the work environment was so toxic. But Ben had convinced her to return, promising he'd make changes to improve things. Then Lisa told me about a work trip to New York. Ben was attending a conference and wanted Lisa to come along. Initially, she was hesitant to leave Emily behind, but Ben offered to cover travel expenses for both of them. I thought it was odd, but Lisa seemed excited about the opportunity, so I didn't want to be the husband who held her back. During the trip, Lisa kept in regular contact. She called me daily and set up video calls with Emily. Everything seemed fine, and when they returned, Emily was full of stories about the fun they'd had in New York. Still, something didn't sit right with me. Lisa seemed more distant than ever. One night, while she was asleep, I checked her phone. I hated myself for doing it, but I couldn't shake the feeling that something was off. To my surprise, I found nothing suspicious. Her messages with Ben were strictly professional, and her photo gallery had no unusual pictures. Even Emily, when I asked her about the trip, didn't mention anything odd. But last week, Lisa told me about another trip. This time, she said she was going to Miami for 2 days with Ben. Emily had exams, so she would stay with Lisa's parents. When I asked who else would be going, Lisa admitted it was just her and Ben. That gnawing feeling came back, stronger than ever. I've been trying to rationalize it. Lisa's always been loyal, and I know how much she's sacrificed for our family. But the secrecy, the frequent trips with her boss, and the way she's been acting all make me wonder if there's more to the story. I don't want to jump to conclusions or accuse her unfairly, but I can't ignore this feeling anymore. Have any of you been in a situation like this? How do you handle doubts like these without causing damage to your relationship? I feel like I'm standing at a crossroads, unsure of which way to turn.